visual connection, I will welcome everyone to our third ASU Talk. I cannot believe this is our third online session. I'm very happy that we
There
are
we go.
meeting here despite some difficult times we're facing. Now we see you, Majid. Hello.
Hi.
Okay, well, how about your connection? Is it working fine now?
Yeah, I think everything is
Okay,
fine now.
perfect. Okay, so let's get back to the introduction here. Okay, so since even though we're facing some difficult times, I hope we'll be able to lift your spirits up a little bit by talking about life in Europe in the eyes of an African. So while you're making yourself cozy in your chairs at home or wherever you're at, let me just remind you that we air this ASU Talk every month. So you can watch us not only on Facebook, but also on the newly established YouTube channel. In case you miss our live sessions, you can always rewatch it later on this mentioned YouTube channel. And you can also find us on the LinkedIn profile. So feel free to just subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for updates. Please also, I want to specifically say that don't be shy and share your opinions with us. We'll be more than happy to share them live also with the rest of the people who are watching us, and we might also incorporate your opinions in the article later, which will be published on our webpage. Okay, so coming back to the topic, people have been migrating since forever, since the beginning of times. Individuals migrate because of different reasons, because of social, economic opportunities, for pleasure, for work, or some of them, unfortunately, they're forced to escape their homes because of wars and political instabilities. Now, there are some also luckier ones, and from the global perspective, there are very few have the luck and the luxury to travel just to enjoy the different atmosphere of different regions. They want to interact with different people. They want to have their holidays abroad and so on and so forth. And so people have indeed all kinds of motivations for migrating. And the result of this phenomenon, however, is that there is rarely a monocultural society to be found in such a complex, interconnected, and diverse world we're living in. And this is no difference for other speakers who are with me today. And today we'll be discovering and exploring their personal motivations to live and stay in Europe. So today with me, there is Majin Yoshi. I hope I said it correctly.
Ngoshi.
Yoshi. Okay. All right. Good. So then we have also Adewale Adetiba with us. Hi, Wale.
Hi everyone. Nice to be here.
And and unfortunately, Christopher Azakia was not able to join us today, but we have also an amazing speaker with my dear colleague from ASO, Martin Mayanja. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. So, Wala, let's start with you. We know each other since 2016 when we were studying together in Germany, and since then you stayed there. So, what was your motivation to for you to come to Europe, and was where your expectations met?
Yeah, so thanks once again for the platform and also for inviting me. And I mean, I think it's important stuff that you guys are doing, and so thanks once again. So to answer the question, I have like a short answer and then I have the long answer. So I'm going to start with the short answer. So basically, the decision to come to Germany specifically was to give myself, a chance at having a much more fuller social and economic, future. So that's the short answer. But as always, I guess with questions like these, the longer answers are much more nuanced, and then because so like in my case, I I grew up in a sleepy little town in the southwestern part of Nigeria, and just what you would consider to be a middle class, upbringing. Dad, mom was a nurse, dad also was a priest. So in that sense, it was just a typical, middle class upbringing for me. But I guess in my case, the most important thing I would say is I grew up to really. I was a book reader. I was an avid book reader. I used to get into books a lot. I'd read, Shakespeare, and I guess in a way, when you read as a young kid, it kind of gives you, like a cosmopolitan view of life, and then you'd rather see the world as a place to be explored, right? So I guess as a young kid, this has always been something that I had in me, but the decision to come to Germany, to Europe, came much more later. After I finished my bachelor's, I started working. But because of the course that I did, I always knew at a point, like at some point in the future, I would have to, if I wanted to do well in that career, that I would have to get my master's at some point. And I guess, my parents always also wanted, this for me, like to get an opportunity to do my master's. And so I guess I always had it in my mind to do that. But I never really thought about Germany at that point, right? It was more maybe the United Kingdom and the United States, a little bit of Canada. Because then at that point you would, I guess, from the Nigerians that I know in my part of the world, you would find a lot more people who go to the United Kingdom, who go to the United States rather than Germany. I guess, like for me, I only knew one person when I was a kid who went to Germany, to study, and then came back later to work in Nigeria. So, Germany was never something that I thought about. I did, when as a middle class person, I mean, you have a decent life, right? But still, when you think about what it takes to probably go to the countries that I mentioned, so United Kingdom and United States at that point, it was it could be quite expensive, right? I mean, you would have to figure out how to pay the tuition, you would have to figure out how to pay the living expenses and all this other stuff. So I
Even as
remember
for us Europeans, yeah.
yeah, I guess exactly, right? So, and I mean, without taking in considerably debt, right? I mean, if you're really weary about, taking in a lot of debt, then you would have to fork out, this huge sums of money, at least to me then. So I did meet someone who told me about Norway, where you didn't really have to pay tuition, and then you could come, and then you just essentially the same model that Germany had. But I thought about this for a minute, but then from my understanding of what the Nordic countries, I just felt like it was like it was going to be a huge step for me with the code, and I just felt it wasn't something that I could do at that point. But then, like, I think it was the second year while I was working, I worked in a bank, by the way. I met a customer who I knew before, and then I think some months after, he contacted me, and then he wanted to do something on his account. And then he told me he was in Germany. So I was like, oh, how did that happen? Then he explained to me that he came for his master's, and just gave me, like a lot of information about how you could actually come with relatively low cost compared to, like the United States and the United Kingdom. So I guess at this point, this was the first time that I would say that I really thought about, coming to Germany. And then I started working on it. And then, as I said, I came in 2016, and I've been in Germany ever since. So initially I was in Freiburg, and then I currently work and live in Munich. And of course, as you also mentioned, my partner is here, and then we have a bit of a son together. And to answer your question, was my expectations about my expectations? I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. Of course, in a sense, you can say. the basic expectations that I had, definitely, no doubt about that. I wanted to get a great education. I did get that. I wanted to get a level of exposure. Of course, I also did get that. And I also wanted to, get some sort of professional experience after my education. So I guess in a sense, you can say, quite a lot of my expectations have been met, and I don't really have any complaints.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, Mazvi, you come from Zimbabwe, and
Mhm.
you have been living in Slovakia for more than 10 years, right?
Yeah, almost 11.
So what do you say? You told me that in your opinion, Slovaks are very different to Zimbabweans. And why do you think so? What are the main differences?
I would say the biggest thing that I observed, especially at work, as in most of my roles here, I've been a trainer, and
What kind of trainer?
sorry.
What kind of trainer? Because if you say trainer, it might be fitness trainer or it might
That's
be,
true. That's true. That was very general. A corporate trainer.
Okay, what does it imply? I'm curious.
Well, it really depends, I would say, but generally, I would be training processes and soft skills. So
Okay.
soft skills like communication, how to write effectively, how to work on certain tools that we use in the day-to-day work, the different systems. So in that role, I would say I saw that. What I saw in terms of the differences between Slovaks and Zimbabweans, the Slovaks don't.
You can give us some valuable tips a little later how to communicate effectively here.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming back to the question. So what are the key differences here?
Yeah, so I would say Slovaks don't tend to speak up, which is quite a big difference that I saw, and it doesn't matter on the situation. So, for example, when it's at work, when I'm training, I was training people of very different nationalities, and whenever a question was asked, you could always count on the Slovaks to look down, avoid eye contact, and just you can see on their face they're hoping that their name won't be called out to respond. Whereas you found people from other countries would raise their hand and be quick to speak. So it's not only about maybe an uncomfortable situation. It doesn't matter whether it's something positive or negative. I find that Slovaks don't tend to give the feedback. So even let's say if it's in a restaurant, if I went out with some colleagues and one of them didn't eat their burger, and I asked her why she didn't eat her burger, and she said because the meat smelled a bit funny. So I said to her, okay, did you tell the waiter? And she was like, no, I will just eat the fries and leave the meat. And I'm like, but why don't you say something? You're paying for the meal. Just, it doesn't need to be an aggressive conversation, but you can still just mention that the meat smells funny. And the other one replied that, Mazvi, we're not troublemakers. So that was very interesting to me that that's how it's viewed, as when you say your opinion or when you speak up, it's like you're seen as a troublemaker. So you'd rather just be quiet, avoid the conflict, and let things pass you by. So whereas for me back home, I've always known, you speak your mind, and it doesn't need to be in an aggressive way or in a negative way. Whether it's something positive or negative, it's okay to give that feedback so that the change can happen. Because if you don't say anything, then nothing will change. So I'd say that's probably the thing.
Yeah, not that I would explain such a behavior. I also understand people who don't want to cause troubles or misunderstandings, whatever. But me personally, I would say something. But I guess it's just a different approach. So yeah. Martin, what was your? Do you have the same reasoning here? Do you have the same experience with Slovaks since you're also living in Slovakia?
Yeah, I would say I have a few scenarios that would kind of relates to what Mazvi just said, where people just say, no, we don't speak up. For instance, there are certain things that I keep questioning here, and I oftentimes ask my wife, but how come this is like this and nobody, makes any noise around it? And she tells me, because that's how it is, we just follow, like there are certain things I'm like, legally this, okay, if it's by law like this, but it doesn't make sense, and the people are okay with it. For instance, like when you talk about apartment buildings, or most of us in the city here, we live in apartments. Here where I am, this is our apartment, we bought it, and we legally it's called an apartment, for example. So there is an apartment and an apartment. And for an apartment, you're not allowed to have permanent address there, right? And for an apartment, you can have permanent residence there. So you can permanently be registered there. However, for this particular one where we are on this building, actually it's called an apartment, but you can have permanent residence on it. Meaning the city actually allowed it to be really a good place for people to stay and all that was cleared. Yet, you still pay higher taxes compared to a normal apartment. So if the city allows people to legally live there, so and even allow them to legally have addresses of those buildings, so they are equally operating as apartments. So why should I pay more tax because of the name they classify them? So I question some things here, and people just tell me, this is how it is here, we don't question. If it was in my country, for instance, people would start already make noise on that, and it would be in the parliament, and if there is a loophole there in the law, it could be changed and it could be fair for everybody. So yes, there are scenarios where indeed I tend to see that people here, yes, they are reserved, they are respectful, but also at the same time they let other things which are unfair pass when they shouldn't be let to pass. Yeah. And yet we are
Since
living
you
in
have
a world which should be more liberal, more open, more outspoken, more understanding of their rights and all that. But at the same time, they let certain things oppress them and they just keep silent about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in certain instances, it might be true, and I also experienced that. I noticed actually once I came back from abroad, that gives you, when you're abroad, you tend to gain a different perspective on your own people and your own country. And I also realized that, and I think this is the problem of the post-communist mentality we gained, because people were used to listen to authorities and obey. So
Yeah.
I think that might be one of the reasons. But anyways, um, since you have been living here for some time in Europe, guys, what was the most challenging experience for you when you first came?
The language.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I don't know about Wale in German, but here, this language is, I think, harder than Chinese. I've never attempted to learn Chinese, but I can only imagine it's harder than Chinese.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it's the same. Like, one of the most important way to really, really integrate is to be able to speak the language of where you're living in, and it's also one of the most difficult things to do. And yeah, it's just for me, like everybody has said, it's basically it's the language, and like it's still an ongoing challenge anyway. So it's not like it's not something that has been resolved fully. So yeah, the language.
Yeah. But again,
Mhm.
I think I can also, much as it's the biggest challenge, but I think I can also blame sometimes ourselves. I've seen this on many of my black friends, that they tend to be in their own circles. They don't so much open up to the new neighbors, the new community they live in. So they tend to be within themselves. So they tend to speak their own languages, and if they come from different countries, for instance, me and Maji, then would speak English. But then I'm imagining if it was the other way around, that we are more mingling with the local people, we would be compelled to speak the language. A case in point here, I traveled to, I once lived in Tanzania, and because I was all alone there and everybody there spoke Swahili and less English, in just 3 months, I was so fine with Swahili. And up to now, I
Uh-huh.
speak Swahili. But I first realized I'm good at speaking the language within 3 months of my living there because I had no other option but to speak the language. I also went to Zimbabwe at one point where Mazvi you live. There, people speak, of course, perfect English, and I didn't learn any word in your language, but I was there in Harare for 3 months, So I think sometimes it's about, again, us. If we don't open up to others and get exposed to what is there, then we don't get to adapt into it. We don't get assimilated into it, and that's why we end up really realizing that the language is too difficult for us because we don't give ourselves enough opportunities to be in that language, to speak the language, and to live the language.
But that's not always the case, Martin. I do agree, but not 100%. Because, for example, I think it also depends on, for example, in Slovakia, if I lived in a smaller town or city where for sure it's the amount of people who speak English are less, then I would have a high chance of learning Slovak. But I am a person who actually, being here since 10 years ago, I was always with, let's say, with non-Africans. Because at that time when I came, I could honestly go for 3 or 4 months without seeing another Black person. And I had Slovak friends, I had Italian friends, from Costa Rica, from Australia, from everywhere. But then my Slovak friends never wanted to speak to me in Slovak because they wanted to practice their English.
Uh,
So in that situation, I had many Slovak friends, but they wanted to speak in English. So it's not even that I didn't want to learn, but for them, that was always the language they would refer to because divert to, because that's what they wanted to practice. So it wasn't so much of a lack of, assimilation or the want. It was also the friends that I had wanted to learn English. So we weren't really speaking Slovak.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think also in my case, I mean, it's I guess with what Martin said, it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, I did have quite a number of German friends, but then we always spoke English. So I mean, I guess for them it's just going to be a lot more difficult. For me, it's a lot more difficult, and then we just settle for what is the easiest thing.
It's more
But also,
convenient.
yeah, exactly, for what is most convenient. But also, for example, not just in my case, I see this also all the time. It's a lot more difficult, because then, for example, you get to Germany, in my case, and in the case of the people that I know, and then you already want to, start to, work to earn money, because of course, even though, you get low tuitions and all this other stuff, it's still quite a bit expensive to support yourself, right? So you want to really, really start to work immediately. Then you have the pressure of also attending classes, and then, by the time you do all this together, it leaves really, really little space, to actually learn the language. For example, in my case, I came to Germany 2016, and then for the next 1 year, I was not in Germany. So, of course, when I got back, I started writing my thesis, and then,
Can maybe explain a little bit why you were not, in fact, in Germany, even
ah,
though you're studying there? I know, of course, but
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, because essentially because of the course that we did, our program meant the structure of our program is you would spend 2 semesters outside of Germany and 2 semesters in Germany. So you do the introductory semester in Germany, and then you do your thesis semester also in Germany, and then you have the choice to either go to Thailand or India or South Africa or Argentina for your second and third semesters. So for these 2 semesters, I was not in Germany, and then you get back, and then you're writing your thesis, and then you want to work also at the same time, and it just got a lot more difficult, and then you say, oh yeah, I'm gonna try to learn it the next month, and then the next month comes, it's just one problem, after the other. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of different things that comes together and then forms a whole. And then you manage. You find out that you manage without speaking the language, and then before you close your eyes and then you open it, you've spent 4 or 5 years and you don't know how to speak the language properly. So yeah.
I believe it must be very challenging. I was also facing a lot of challenges, even though I'm more familiar with German. But even though I wanted to get better in it and improve my German skills, it was very challenging because, of course, we had to study, and then I also have to live from something. So I had to work, and that was a little bit of time frame to actually learn the language, right? But putting the language aside here, what were the challenges in terms of European mentality, if even something like that exists? Like you coming from Africa, as an African person coming to Europe, were there any specific issues or different behavior that you're very you looked at it and you were like, okay, this is very striking, this is so different, we don't do these kind of things at home, or something that at home might be completely different. So was there anything like that for you?
Well, I mean, in my case, why I do always try to avoid, generalizations, because it's always it could be dangerous just to generalize. One of the more striking things that I found was just, of course, because when you come from Nigeria, that I come from, where things are a lot more, there's a lot of more of pomp, to things. We are always, people say we are always loud, we are always like, it's always one party after the other. It's just, there's just this more oomph to life, right? It's always, I mean, things can be difficult, but then you always find, this exciting part of life also. So we always know how to enjoy and all this sort of stuff. I guess in a sense, it was a lot more striking to see the differences, right? So for example, you would get in a tram or in a bus, and then people really didn't talk to each other, right? And then even in Nigeria, I mean, in Lagos, you don't have to know anybody when you get into a public transport. You would find someone who would have something to say or say to you. You might not even want the attention, but you would definitely get the attention. So it's just the little things, where you get into the buses and people don't talk, and even the neighbors, how you relate with each other. Sometimes, I mean, I was lucky that I lived in a place, and we both lived in a place where we had really, really great neighbors, and we had like this camaraderie amongst ourselves. But I know the experiences was much different for a lot of my friends, where, you would have neighbors you don't talk for a very long time. Sometimes people don't even know each other. I mean, this, I believe, would never happen in Lagos, for example. I mean, if you have a neighbor, either you want to or not, you guys will be friends. I mean, maybe not friends on a deeper level, but you would be into each other's business. So in a way, this was one of the more striking things that I found. I mean, of course, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different.
Before I actually encourage someone or people to contribute to our discussion, we already have a comment here. Doesn't say that, doesn't specify the name. However, I'm gonna read it. Do you think communism had that have been here in Slovakia still rears its ugly head up to now? Because during communism, the Czechoslovaks were afraid of the system, and any discomfort with the system, like even asking questions, could cause a huge penalty to your family as being sidelined in the socio-economic participation. What is your take, Zuzana and Maji? Okay, Maji, go ahead.
Okay. To what extent it still rears its head, I can't really comment, of course, as a person who didn't live and experience that time. But what I will say is that for sure, the things that happened in the past, you still see the effects in the present. I think in any country, whether if we're talking about Zimbabwe during colonization, you still see today some of the effects of that on the way people think, on the way people behave. So it's not something that's automatic that will just switch off and people will change how they behave or react to certain situations. But in terms of asking the questions, I would say I definitely do see it, because many times, even at work, when we're having team meetings, I know some people who will say to me directly that they are afraid to ask questions, during the team meetings in front of everybody, because they're afraid of the answer they're going to get, if they're going to be discouraged, if they're going to be maybe even reprimanded for the question that they've asked. So a lot of the times they would rather ask, when you have like the one-to-one meetings rather than in a public setting. Or even sometimes if you go out to a restaurant, as I said, in those situations where either you even just simply asking a question, it doesn't have to be feedback, but sometimes the response you may get from the waiter or from the manager is that situation of, this is how it is. If you don't like it, you can go and eat somewhere else. So these kinds of reactions is what discourage many people to ask questions. So in this way, I do see that the effects of communism might still be there. But as I said, as a person who didn't live here and experience it, or even know, let's say from my parents or grandparents, it's not really something I can say I can comment on in depth.
Well, from the perspective of Slovak person born here, I also haven't experienced the previous regime though, but I think the traces of the past of communism still remains. There are still traces of it here. So I think a lot of behavioral things and behaviors and learned actions were put on us on the other generation. So and the other day I was talking to my parents and we were discussing some political issues going on in Slovakia these days, also in relation to politics and the COVID situation and so on and so forth. And while we were talking, my dad mentioned that, well, yeah, the situation is changing and we are the society is moving somewhere. You can actually see the progress in some way, because maybe 10-15 years ago it was almost impossible to even think that people would go out in march or protest against the government, because people, and of course people must have been unhappy with certain things. It's not like they would enjoy everything what the government would propose. It's just that the it was not normal, it was not usual to even think that way, that we can raise our voices and march on the street and say something out loud what we're not happy about. It was just not within our mentality here. So I think with the other upcoming generations, also the new mentality comes up. So yeah, to answer this question, I would definitely say that there are still traces in the communism, and it's not that easy to erase those kind of things from the mentality of people, right? So it just takes time, and I also don't want to say that now the old generation's mentality is always wrong, or there were only bad things happening in communist times. I'm sure there were a lot of people who enjoy that kind of system, and I don't want to dispute it, or I don't want to have anything against it. I'm just saying that also the society is developing from one point to another. It's the other thing to say whether if it's good or wrong or to what extent. But the fact is that we're moving and the society is developing and going somewhere. We also have another comment here. Understanding a new culture and its people, it's important to understand and interact with people from different strata of the society. And in this case, the local language reigns supreme. If you are stratified within your community, in this case, colleagues just confines you within the community and deprives you of knowing other rich stuff from people from other tires that probably you don't share much in common.
Yeah.
Can somebody reflect
Yeah, I
on
mean,
that?
yeah, I guess it's true, right? I mean, it is really important to not just confine yourself to the cycle of friends that, you know, you always, you know, are going to be together all the time. I mean, for me, in my case, what I tell, so if I have someone who comes to me for advice and say, I want to study in Germany, blah 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 and all that, and the first thing I tell them, look, I would advise you to try to learn the language as fast as you can, even while you're still, you know, wherever you might be, even when you're not in Germany, because I really do believe that it gives you an opportunity to have a much more fuller participation, you know, in the community in which you find yourself. It gives you an opportunity to have much more. It just enhances your life in a lot of ways, right? I mean, yeah, you cannot really overemphasize the need to speak the language of the community where you live in. And even more than anything, I think it's also like it's the one way you can show that you do respect the people, you know. I mean, to let them know that you do respect them in a way by being able to communicate in a language in which they understand. So yeah, you cannot really overestimate you know, this really important part. So I think it's a good comment in that sense.
Yeah, and actually, I also agree with Wale because once you speak the local language, it's like you start attracting the local people towards you. I know a couple of friends here who are of African origin who speak perfect Slovak. So whenever I'm out with them and they speak Slovak, you see how vibrant the spaces of the Slovak people, you know, turns. Like they automatically he becomes a magnet. They want to speak with him. Oh, he speaks Slovak, and he starts speaking. So I really
You know,
realized,
it's very sympathetic when someone who is not from Slovakia is able to speak your language.
yeah. So indeed, it's language is one of the key things to harmoniously get integrated into any country or any
So
new
that's
environment.
why. So that's why you decided to study Slovak, right?
Yeah, currently I'm trying to self-study. Yes, quarantine times, you know. So I am trying to learn. There's this website called Slovakia.eu. Anybody, any other person can try to learn from it. It's really nice website. You don't need a teacher. You can do it on your own. But also you can hire teachers. There are so many teachers around.
Mm.
Yeah. So right now I'm trying my best now to get back to learning Slovak.
It
We're
also
gonna
helps
test
when
you
your
on that
partner is
later.
from that country.
Come
Sorry,
again?
Mazvi?
I said it also helps when your partner is from that country because then you have an in-home teacher.
Yeah, it helps. But personally, my wife is a Slovak speaker, and we never speak Slovak because I don't know. I feel it's so slow for me when I want something from her, whatever. And we have to speak Slovak. Sometimes she tries, and I always keep replying in English. I should change myself. So yeah.
We will test you on that, Martin. But I also wanted to ask you one thing. Even though, Wale, you said you don't like generalizations that much, but I'm gonna ask that question anyways. Okay. So, is there something like Africanness, and if so, could you guys describe it? Is there something that's similar, even though you're coming from different countries within Africa? You, in comparison now to European mentality or Slovak mentality or German mentality, is there something that connects you three? I'm just wondering.
I think with firstly, I would start with the perspective that the first thing is for people not to look at Africa as a country. It's very different whether you're from when you're from the south, from the west, from the east, from the north. It's very different. And then of course those from the south have similarities, those from the west have similarities, those from the east have similarities, and those from the north have similarities. But one thing I can say, Martin and Wale can correct me if I'm wrong, is that in terms of Africans as a whole, we have what the South Africans call Ubuntu,
Yeah.
right? Which is like a togetherness. it's like no matter where in the world you are,
Kind of
and
a
it doesn't
brotherhood.
matter if you're from a different country, if you're from the west or the east or the north or the south. If we are in Slovakia and we're Africans, there's a togetherness. We
I
are.
want to ask you,
It's like we find family.
even though what you said, you don't mind generalizations that much, but there is something going on. I'm not sure what's there, but I hear voices. Do we have another speaker out there? Somebody wants to join us.
I think it stopped though.
In the comments, I saw yes. So I don't know if that was a response to the voices we heard.
I'm not sure, but in case you guys want to contribute to our discussion, you are more than welcome. Please do. And the way you do it is to write a comment. We're gonna show up in the what do you call it? This panel thing. So please do share your opinions. We will. I will open it up. Martin will put it there, and we're gonna reflect on that. So please do. Okay. So guys, coming back to the question here.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I I, um I think just like what she said, and this is uh yeah, it is always very important to not fall into the trap of Africa is a country. I mean, in a way, I don't I have I've seen quite a lot of friends from other part of the continent, and I think that the only way in which this is any close to reality is if you look at it at a governmental level, right? Maybe if you look at it at a governmental level, at a political level, you might see just a glimmer of truth in this. But anything beyond that is just, like a huge generalization that has no basis in reality. Because I feel, and just going exactly to what she said, you would get much more similarity with people who are from the same part of the country. So, for example, I'm from the southwestern part of the country, and I think you might see quite a bit of similarities between people who are from this part, of the country, right? So I might not necessarily have a lot of things in common with someone from the northern part of the country, and but if you have someone from like this, so like the cities in my part of the country, so you might find one or two similarities with that you can really call like that is close to generalization. You can say, oh, people who are Yorubas, for example, they are this, they are that,
Which is the tribe in Nigeria?
which is the part of the country where I'm from, which is the ethnic group that I'm from. But apart from that, I don't see that. But of course, she also mentioned this the Ubuntu, the togetherness thing. I think it's also right. I mean, but I think it's I don't know how you would explain that. I've tried to explain it, because it's just like you're walking on the street, you see someone who is from Africa, and then you don't know each other, but you just nod, and there's this mutual acknowledgement of I see you, and all. Sometimes it doesn't have to be more than that, but you guys don't say anything to each other, but you also say 1,000 words to each other. So I guess in that sense, there is that, but beyond that, no.
Martin, any comments on that? Unfortunately,
I think he's muted.
Yeah, you're muted. Magical, please unmute.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and like Wale said, it actually happens to me too. Every time I'm somewhere within Europe and I see a black man or a black lady, immediately it's just like a reflex. I say hello or I notice something and they do the same back to me. Sometimes if they saw me first, they are the ones to do that. So there is this kind of connection that is not easy to explain. And I never see this amongst the white folks back in Africa, because anyway, I see many of them there. They pass by each other like they don't know each other. But for us here, it's quite different. That it's difficult to pass a fellow black guy. Normally, for me, it doesn't happen. I always have to say something. Hey, bro, say lady, you say hi, and you don't have to speak many things, but just that one hi is always there. There's that gesture that we are all like, we are one. I'm happy to see you, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people might argue it's because of the fact that there are not so many of black people. For example, in if we're talking about Slovakia, there are not so many black people in Slovakia, so that's why, since it's kind of or rarer to spot some other black person, and once you see some fellow black person, of course you greet him or her
Like I told
because
you,
it's not that common. But but again, if I think that's my personal view on it. If I was somewhere in some African country where it wouldn't be so many white people, I don't think we would respond to each other the same way as you guys respond to each other.
exactly. And this is what I told you because
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in Tanzania where I was working with a tourist company, and also back in Uganda where I come from. I see many white folks. I just came back from Uganda recently, and you see so many of these white people, and they just pass by each other. There's not that kind of Ubuntu, as March calls it, that you see amongst them. They act the same way they act when they're here. You know, everybody for themselves. That kind of attitude. So I
Uh,
think
yeah, continue, please. Sorry.
I think there is that kind of difference, and it makes us stand out that we are warm people, we are welcoming, uh, irrespective of the other, conspiracies around and stereotypes.
Yeah,
I am
I
seeing
know.
so many. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Wale?
Yeah, just a little bit about what you said. When you said maybe it's because they're like few people, and then maybe just seeing each other as like, oh, you are here and all that. But I mean, I haven't been to the States and even into the United Kingdom, but I've also read about this. That where at the very least you have a lot more African people in the United Kingdom, in the States also, and you still also get this phenomenon. So it's
Uh-huh.
also, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe like having few people actually explains it. I don't know. I have tried to find an explanation for it. I haven't gotten one, but it's just something that just is.
I think that is one of the things, though, the fewer places. Because, for example, I've been to the States many, many times,
Hmm.
and you don't see that, right? Because
Hmm.
there's many black people, or even I can say the times I've been to Paris, where there's a bigger black community, or even
Hmm.
Vienna, right, next door, where there's a huge African community. You don't really see, as I said, you can still, yes, you can still acknowledge. I'd say in Europe, you still kind of acknowledge and smile at each other, but you see it more exaggerated in the
Hmm.
places where there
Uh-huh.
are fewer people. I mean, just last week, I was in our park, and there was one girl, she waved at me
Which
so
shopping
enthusiastically.
center in
Yes,
Slovakia?
yeah,
Okay.
sorry, it's a shopping mall in Bratislava. She waved at me so enthusiastically that you would think we are friends,
Hmm.
but I don't know her. I've never seen her. She's never seen me. But it's just the fact that for her, she's like, oh, another African, you know? So I think that definitely is one of the factors. But I think, as you know, we still kind of have that where we will always be ready to help each other out, regardless of
Yeah.
whether we
That's a
are
very
best
nice point.
friends or not. If you know
Mhm.
someone needs help who's another African, we pull together and help each other.
Yeah.
I noticed that a long time ago, and it was really nice to observe you guys interacting with each other in this way. I find it really nice. We have a comment from Jeff Kalus who says, "I want to come in." So I guess the Jeff, you want to contribute in the as a speaker. So feel free to do that. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll be very happy to interact with you and discuss with you on this further. Jude Yokai, which is, by the way, our colleague in ASU, asked, can you guys share what was the biggest positive realization or wake up call when coming to Europe? How did you imagine Europe when you were a child? Good question.
Well, I can say, for me, my family is generally well traveled, and I had sisters that studied in France and the UK. So it's not like Europe was a foreign concept to me, or that, I kind of knew what to, let's say, expect. Um, one thing I would say that was quite interesting for me was that, as an African, you are used to getting, let's say, to say it in the nicest way, interesting questions from non-Africans. And when I moved to Slovakia, and one of the second job that I had was in a contact center at one company, and we were supporting customers in UK and Ireland. And when they would find out that we were in Bratislava, firstly, they didn't even know where that was.
Oh yeah, I hear it
It's
very
part of
often.
Europe. There was even a question once that, do you have electricity there? In Bratislava, in Slovakia, European.
Seriously? I mean, come
Serious.
on.
For me, this is very interesting as an African, because those are the questions we normally get, right, from non-Africans. So it was very, very interesting to hear a European asking another European the same type of question. So that was very interesting to me. But in terms of what I'd say, one of the main differences for me that I can appreciate in Europe is that things function. The system functions. Whereas back home, it can be the smallest thing, like maybe even trying to pay by card in a shop, and then that doesn't always work. But here things function. So that's one thing I can say I really would say appreciated here, which makes it a little bit hard when I go back home, because you're so used to, I go home every year, but when you're so used to things working the way that they should work, and then you go back home and now you have to deal with things like load shedding, there isn't always electricity, then sometimes water gets shut off, or, it's it's a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, for me, my understanding of Europe, I don't know. I guess as opposed to United States of America, where of course, like it's a juggernaut uh, with just how it influences, no matter the part of the world where you might be, right? I mean, you cannot really run away from the United States of America, right? Well, but that is Europe is a little bit different from that, right? And my knowledge and understanding of Europe, I guess you could say, is from the United Kingdom, right? I mean, knowing that United Kingdom is the same continent in a way with Europe, because then of course you grow up and learn about colonialism, and then of course you cannot really disassociate the history of the country from that of the United Kingdom, because apart from the fact that it's also in the past, it's also an ongoing thing, right? You can always see it in some sense. But of course, like I said earlier, I was a big reader, and you'd read about some of the wars, and you understand, how that played out in Europe, how Europe was the epicenter, and all this other stuff. So in a sense, that was kind of the thing that I understood, or that punctuated my views about Europe, especially Germany, because I remember when I told some of my friends that I was going to go to Germany, they were like, "What? Why would you want to go to Germany? I mean, that's like, isn't that the most, yeah, racist place on earth? Blah blah blah, and all this other stuff." Because their understanding of Germany as did not really go beyond the walls, right? And we didn't really, at least from my part of the world, we didn't really see anything. It's not like we watched German movies or all this other stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But then, so in a way, coming was a little bit petrified, because I just did not know what to expect, right? As opposed to, you being able to have an expectation. I didn't really know what to expect in my case. I came with an open mind, but I was slightly petrified. But I have to be honest, like from the moment I stepped into the train, stepped down from the plane and got into the train to get to Freiburg, it was just unbelievable, the amount of help and the amount of respect also that I got. I came late to our program, and just seeing how people, sort of came around me, made me feel so much welcome. And yeah, it was all overwhelmingly like positive for me. But Then I also always say to people that, when I talk about this, is in a way for me, the program that I did was a little bit self-selecting, because the nature of the program kind of selects the kind of people who apply to the program. So you kind of expect some certain some certain people in the program, so maybe that made it easier. And also going to Freiburg also was a place where it's small, but it's also beautiful, and it's much more open-minded. It's the politics and everything kind of makes it so much easy for someone who was coming. So for me, it was like this softest welcome that I could get, and it just really kind of made my experiences from there on much more positive than whatever I might have felt, before I came.
Yeah. And can I just say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Martin.
I was gonna say that one of the most vivid also things that hit me is that things were here more organized than where I come from. But the most important thing that I liked about my new home here is that people tend to respect each other a little bit more than where I come from. People tend to respect others' property a little bit more than where I come from. I don't know if it's because of the culture of myself and my family that they tend to really give you your space, but also it goes far beyond that. That, for example, when I leave, I don't know, forget my phone somewhere, it's easy for somebody to say, hey, you've forgotten your phone than where I come from, for example, or whatever other small thing. You see that people really not that they care about you, but they give you space and they respect even your stuff. So it's more respect here amongst people than where I come from. People give you a space and people let you move in your own lane without really stepping on you or all that.
Right.
Like when you go to make a line,
Yeah.
for example, people don't just come and join in between lines. People respect that, and they just know that, okay, there is a queue somewhere, I have to go behind the queue. I don't have to just join it from anywhere. Where I come from, people just find space and join in. On the roads, when you're driving, people respect the rules on the road. So there's more order, there's more respect. That's one thing really I liked about my new home.
We have another comment from Emmanuel Steve, who is saying he's watching from Tanzania. We're very happy to hear that, Emmanuel. Please do spread the word among your colleagues, among your friends, among your family members, your brother, your sister, your father, your mother. Anyone who is interested in the purpose of African-Slovak Union will be very happy to see people watching us or following us also outside of Slovakia. We're very happy to hear that. Another comment, what do you guys think the main reason of that togetherness of the African is it the did I get it right? Yeah. Is the fear of racism as Africans might share the same fear, or what's the other reasons? Okay, guys, very, very briefly, because we have to move on to other questions, and we are also running out of time. So just briefly, okay?
So before we answer that question, sorry, I just have one more thing to the previous conversation, that in terms of the expectations and I find that many times people expect everything in Europe to be better, which is not always the case.
Yeah.
Right. So, sometimes like when even when I was interacting with some Slovaks, it didn't happen often, but they'd look at me like, oh, it's almost like, you poor African, you must be so happy that you're finally in Europe. And I'm like, actually, not really, because you have no idea why I came here. I didn't run away from anything. I'm just simply exploring the world at a time when I'm able to. I mean, when I first landed in Bratislava, and I got to the Bratislava airport, my first thought was, where have I come to? Because the airport really was like that of a small village, and this is it. You come and now it's a new airport and everything, but when you come in, people always expect everything to be better. But I'm like, actually, where I'm coming from, our airport was 100 times better than this one, or maybe our roads are better. So just
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, this relates very much to the stereotypical image we want to challenge as an African-Slovak Union here, because what we think is that people in Europe, or especially in Slovakia, tend to have this idea of Africa, as you said, being a country still. Surprisingly, a lot of people think that's one thing. Secondly, a lot of people think when there is an Africa in mind, they would think that, okay, well, Africa, safaris, beautiful nature, some animals, elephants, giraffes, and so on and so forth, and then hungry people, you know. Uh, Kids with big bellies, not having anything to eat. Political instability is worse, but it's not only the case. It's just one part of the picture, but it's not the full story.
It is. And
Uh,
I've gone back home with many people to Zimbabwe because I tell people, come and see for yourself. It's the only
mhm,
way you're going to know. I've been with friends from Latvia, Italy, Slovakia, America, So every time I go home, I always take some friends with me because I'm like, you need to see it for yourself and experience it. And I can tell you, every single person who's gone there has absolutely loved it. And some have even been more than once because they enjoyed it that much. So I'm like, it's not just about poverty, war, and hunger and all of this. It's a lot more. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So sorry, to
and I
the
think
question. Hmm.
this was really covered in our recent topic, stereotypes. Yeah, I cannot agree anymore to this. Yes.
And I think to the question about our togetherness, I would say from the perspective of growing up, there was always a sense of community growing up within our family, within our neighborhoods. If someone is sick, you go and visit them. You don't just call them, are you okay, or wait until they recover. You actually go to their home, make sure they're okay, you help them. So there was always growing up that sense of community, that sense of togetherness. So I believe it's very built within us, it's built within me, that it doesn't matter where I go, it's still there. So I don't believe it's not driven by fear. It's not something that's driven by fear. It's something that's driven by love.
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
agree.
mean, I totally agree with that. You know,
That's
I'm, yeah, it's just you just grow up to to learn to love and also respect people. I mean, that could also have its own negative aspect, right? So it's not all this was at least you grow up with this togetherness sort of, but also in my part of the world where I'm from, it's always came with the idea that you have to be differential to people, you have to differential to, especially to elders, right? And this also has some of its
mhm,
problems, right? So you have to be careful that, of course, you can export the good parts as with many other things you find, amongst people in the world, but also you have to be careful because there are also a big part of it that you really don't want to export on a larger scale.
mhm.
yeah.
We
Indeed, it's
also
not
have
fear.
another question. Yeah, Martin, you want to say something? Sorry, I cut you short.
So just to affirm that indeed it's nothing to do with fear, but it's a natural instinct within us.
Mhm.
That where we are few, like because somebody mentioned that in Paris, I've also been to Paris. I didn't see it that much anyway. So where there are fewer black people and you don't see many of them, when you meet one, there's this sense of, oh my God, I met a brother. So that's how it comes in. When there's so many around you, then the instinct doesn't come through. So it's nothing to do with fear, but rather a natural instinct, I would say.
Yeah. We have another question from this mysterious Facebook user. Dear Facebook user, you might also like to share your real name. We would love to know what's your name here, okay? But anyways, can Ubuntu be spread out of the African continent and incorporate other non-Africans? Is there what Ubuntu has that can benefit other people from the rest of the world? A very good question. I was thinking about the same thing. So maybe we can start with Martin this time.
Can it be spread out of Africa? Like I said, this is a natural instinct. Some things are within us that you cannot even explain it, like we were saying earlier. So can it be spread? Of course, it can be copied. that next time I'll meet a colleague like this, I'll just wink at them, or I'll wave at them. You can learn it definitely, and once you do it many times, it can become part of you. Can we really proactively spread it? I don't think so. But the more we do it, the more others see us doing it, maybe they can pick it on. Like I said, it can be learned, but to us, it is something natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, just to comment on that, as a Slovak person, it's maybe a challenge and nice thing to observe on Africans, or maybe people of different origins coming from different countries. We can also learn this positivity as well, and apply it to our own behavior here. So I think this is one of the positive things to learn from. Definitely, I think at this point we lost Wale, but hopefully he's gonna come back very soon because we miss him. Yeah, and I think he is back. Well,
Yeah.
welcome back. I don't know what happened, but
There was an issue with my phone.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we have another
comment from Naomi Thoughts. Africa is comprised of 55 states, beautifully diverse. It's a beautiful continent, people and cultures as unique as its diversity. There is always two sides to our continent, corruption and may have lagged our progress, but going back, it all leads back to colonialism, neocolonialization, the visual cycle of aid, etc. But yo, embracing Mamaland, Ubuntu. Okay.
I like this comment.
And it is true. I'm like, I think it's a long-standing kind of argument as well. Some people say, oh, for how long are we going to blame colonization? But at the same time, it really put a huge dent into the continent, into the people, and still does to this day. The same as I was saying with that question about the effects of communism here. All of that still plays a part in many things. And you see with the level of corruption, and corruption is everywhere, it's just about how much is there. For example, back home in, let's say, I will generalize now in Africa. Of course, I'm not saying it's the same in every country, but maybe there's money for roads to be built. Maybe the road will be built, but maybe they will start and not finish. And then 80% of that money will be taken for personal use. Whereas, let's say in Slovakia, the corruption can still be there, but they will take only 20% of the money and use 80% to build and finish the road. So it's everywhere. It's just a matter of the degree of the corruption.
Level and the easiness of taking that, doing that corruption. But like where I come from, somebody can embezzle billions and nobody touches them, and even who took the money, but they're so powerful even for the law to catch up on them.
Yeah.
But here it could not be the other way. I mean the same. So here people are still doing corruption, but at a different dimension, or let's say wavelength.
And there's true consequences for it here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this mysterious Facebook user just replied to my call here, and he says his name is actually Kiboy Sakong, our very good friend. Kiboy, thank you for sharing your real name with us. He also says a wonderful conversation. Kudos, keep it up. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Unfortunately, guys, since we're running out of time, I'm afraid we won't be able to read all your comments, but we will try to reply to them after the conversation. So I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, this is what happens when you have limited time. Guys, question. What does it mean for you to be an African, especially within the European context? Are you proud to be African?
Yeah, personally, I am very proud to be African. And, at the end of the day, it makes me feel strong because, the way people look at me and wish to be like me somehow. I used to think it was different, that it was us who are wishing to be like, the other side. But when I see that many people actually wish to be like me, many people would like to go to Africa, many people go to Africa and they want to go back there and live there. It makes me strong and feel proud that I come from a land which is so attractive. I have so many white folks who have been to Africa, and when they go there the first time, they keep going back and back and back. I just came back with one of them, like Maggie said, the time she goes somebody. I went with one colleague of mine, now actually business partner, and hey man, it looks like he found a second home for himself. While there, I found a German guy who's been there for 8 years, and he tells me there's no home like Uganda. I'm from Germany, but this is my home. So it makes me proud to be part of that land, which is so attractive. I am here in Europe. Yes, Slovakia is my second home right now. But if you ask me home when I'm just from my sleep, you ask me where you come from, where is your home? I'll tell you back there. So really, I'm proud to be a black man, and uh, there's nothing more I can say. But I'm really, really proud to be black. Yeah.
What about the rest of you guys?
Yes,
Mazvi?
definitely. For me, firstly, I can say that who I identify as a child of God, as a Christian. That is who I identify as, and I just happen to come from Zimbabwe, from an African country, and I believe we should all be proud of where we come from, and pride in such a way that we do not see others as less. So always be proud of where you come from, but not seeing other people as less based on where they come from.
Very wise words here. Wale, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I cannot be home proud, right? So, yeah, like in the sense where Africa being the continent in which you are from, yeah, I mean, in that sense, you can say, yeah, of course, I am proud. It's you are the sum total of all the experiences that you have had, and just being able to call upon all these experiences, for me it's something that I really relish. It's something that I love, and it's something that I am proud of and will always be proud of. So in that sense, yeah, I am proud of being an African. But then, what does that really mean in the real sense of it, right? I'm just a Yoruba boy at the end of the day, and that's for me is the more important part of it, rather than this because at the end of the day, it's just a name, right? Yeah, anyways, yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, that's very nice to hear. There were some very wise words towards the end of our discussion. Unfortunately, as I said, we're running out of time, and this is actually the end of our conversation for today. I very much thank you guys for being with us today. It was really, really enriching conversation, not only for me, but hopefully for our audiences here. I hope our audience had a very good time with us today. And just to let you know, we'll be also there next year, and we hope we will also have your support in 2021. Stay healthy, everyone. I know it's really tough these days, but hopefully we'll be able to meet in real life soon enough. So see you next year, hopefully in person, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you guys. Bye bye.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chris.
same to
Thank
you.
you. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye.